complaints about students, instead of being complaints, should be moments when we reflect upon what we're teaching, why we're teaching that, and then how. How might we do it differently? When people say students can't write, I try to reframe it and think about, well, what are you really trying to get students to do by writing? Are you trying to get them to maybe learn or engage in ways that they wouldn't if they weren't to write? We're all mistake prone in our writing. We make errors, and it's maybe not such a crisis after all.
I work with students around writing. I work with their strengths. Writing is very much about thinking and about the expression of ideas, and all of us can do that. All of us have struggles as we write, and so it's a matter of working with students and helping them, which is what we do here, one-on-one, to really develop themselves as writers. We all can write, and we all do write, and I think the one thing that's great about new media is that everybody does write.
When I first started teaching, it was about 40 years ago, and students were different then, and I think the average college student was probably a better writer than the average college student is now. You had a pretty small percentage of young people going to college, but what we have today at a place like this certainly makes for a far better society.
We've never had higher rates of education and literacy in the history of our country, let alone the world. We've made education available to more people and more options and more access than ever before, in an unprecedented move in the history of the world. And we've seen the results that are beneficial and positive. But the problem is, and I think it's partly human nature, it's also partly the kind of advertising-driven culture that we live in today, that instead what it's done is simply caused us to ramp up our expectations. What matters in terms of writing and literacy depends upon the rhetorical situation. But if you look at our curriculum and you look at the way institutions of higher education are set up in our culture, these issues are much less directly acknowledged. And so as a result, I would argue that in fact students' capacity for literacy has never been greater. I think it's easy to be judgmental when we have sort of vague notions of what is literacy or what is good writing. But when you start pinning people down, they often themselves will begin to recognize upon reflection that things are much more complicated. That is, all of us have had experiences writing effectively or composing in various media effectively with certain tasks in certain genres and certain situations, only to find ourselves suddenly much less fluid, much less comfortable when given a task in another realm.
The thing that's interesting about all the social media stuff is it's all Facebook and Twitter and blogging and all these sorts of related kinds of things are they definitely transform the way that writing happens and is distributed because of the digital nature of it and the social nature of it, the network nature of it. But at the end of the day, they're all words in a row kinds of compositions, and so students do lots and lots and lots of writing in these kinds of spaces. Writing changes based on the purpose. I mean, every student knows that. I mean, at the very simple kind of level, the kind of writing that you do successfully in a, say, chemistry class is not the kind of writing you do successfully in a poetry class. Every different genre, every different kind of writing creates different kinds of challenges that writers have to master. The trick is to make people understand that different contexts call for different kinds of writing choices, which is again, that's what makes writing hard and interesting.